food stamp enrollment has hit a new low. How low? Well, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, it recently recorded about $45.6 million Americans that are enrolled in the SNAP program. Now, that as of February. Now, the SNAP monthly enrollment figure has not dropped below 46 million since August 2011, with 45.8 million participants. And this is from the Huffington Post, which means that we have about 200,000 less people on food stamps than we had previously before as of February. So that's good news. It's the lowest enrollment figure since 2011. Now, the reasons why are kind of mixed. But first, before I get to some of those reasons, I want to go to some statements about this. In an emailed statement to the Huffington Post, Kevin Concannon, who's the USDA Undersecretary for Nutrition, says that, quote, SNAP is designed to be responsive to the economy, and this downward trend is an encouraging sign that the economic recovery is finally reaching struggling families. Now, I don't quite agree with that. I think that our economic recovery has been incredibly lopsided. It's benefited the richest people in America. 99% of the gains, or pretty much all the gains, overall since the economic recovery began, have all filtered towards the rich, and middle class and the poor have lost. The middle class has become the poor, and the working poor have just become poorer. And they've lost value. They've lost assets. They've lost wealth. And what little benefit has come from the gains have just served to sort of offset those losses from the poor and the middle class. So you can't really say that they've gotten ahead. But anyway, I mean, the economy is getting a little bit better, but people are still struggling, and people are still far behind than before they crashed the economy, the banks. All right. Anyway, back to Kevin Concannon. He says, the best way to reduce spending in this program, and I say this all the time, is to continue improving the economy. Connect recipients with job training and job placement assistance, and raise the minimum wage. That's what I say all the time. Raise the minimum wage so that working families can afford to make ends meet. There you go. You have to raise the minimum wage. If you don't like welfare, if you're a conservative, if you're a true conservative, true fiscal conservative, I don't think the Republican Party is conservative at all. But if you're a true conservative who believes in getting people on their feet, getting people to stand on their own, getting people to take care of themselves, pull themselves up by their bootstraps, then you would support a higher minimum wage. You should, in theory. Because if you work, there is no reason that if you put in hard work, if you work full time, there's no reason that you shouldn't get a living wage, a wage that you can actually live on. Now, some people try to throw in qualifiers. Well, I wouldn't want to pay my, how hard is flipping burgers, right? It actually is a hard job. If you've ever done it before, it's not the easiest job in the world. It is very fast. It is very demanding. And not only that, but they demean this work. I thought work was supposed to bring you dignity. Isn't that what all these conservatives say? Go out and enjoy the dignity of work. Get off welfare. Enjoy the dignity of work. Okay, well, you get a fast food job because, let's face it, we're a service economy and that's all you have available. You get a fast food job and they treat you as if you have no dignity. Oh, get a better job. What are you doing? You don't deserve a living wage if you flip burgers. If you work at Taco Bell, you don't deserve that. Get a real job. But you told me to get a job. I got a job. I got two. And that's not enough because they're in food service. That's the hypocrisy we're talking about. But anyway, and I want to point out too, that a lot of people who are working those fast food jobs and making minimum wage, they also have to rely on government benefits. Whereas if you increase the wage, that no longer comes from your pocket. Because where Where does those social programs come from? Where does that welfare come from? It comes from taxpayer money. Where does a minimum wage increase come from? Well, it comes from employers. It comes from wealthy investors, right? Through taxation. No, I'm sorry, that's welfare. Higher minimum wage comes from the corporate bottom line. And it also comes from some higher prices for fast food. But of course, studies have shown that the price impact for a regular person going to McDonald's is like 8 cents. It's not a huge increase. Just to be able to allow people to think of how much you would save. $8 or 8 cents for a burger, right? 8 cents more for a meal. Versus how much money you put in welfare programs through taxation. It's kind of a no-brainer when you actually look at the numbers and you do the math. So if you're conservative, you should be for a higher minimum wage. It's just that simple. It's math. Anyway, this article continues. Okay. Due to an improving economy and new enrollment restrictions, and this is where it comes to, good news. It's sort of mixed news on why these numbers are going down, enrollment. Now, because of these restrictions and a better economy, SNAP enrollment is expected to continue its downward trend. Many states have been tightening their SNAP restrictions as the unemployment rate drops. As a consequence, the Center of Budget Policy Priorities projected an enrollment decrease of 1 million by next year. Now that's significant. So you go from 45.6 million to 44.6 million. That's substantial, but it still has a long way to go. Now, what are these restrictions? Well, part of this is restrictions, and one of these is work requirements. Work requirements. Now, because of the bad economy, a lot of these work restrictions have been waived. Okay. You must either work 20 hours a week or do job training programs. They used to have these work restrictions. A lot of them were waived because of the recession, but this is what was normally there. Originally, to qualify for food stamps, you would have had to work 20 hours a week or do a job training program. It's just like Clinton's Welfare for Work program. Actually, under that same bill that reformed the TANF system, it also reformed food stamps. The only thing is that people get food stamps now because of some of these waivers. Well, those waivers are going away. A lot of states are saying, we're not even going to take that federal money and do these waivers because we want to rile up our conservative base and show how fiscally conservative we are by not helping feed the poor. Now, many states have these requirements that have high unemployment from lack of jobs and no job training programs. So people willing to work, right? There are people out there willing to work in these states that have waived those requirements, who have reversed their stance on waiving those requirements, who now have those requirements back into place. A lot of those still have high unemployment. Those are conservative states. I believe we have 31 governors and 29 legislatures that are conservative controlled in America now. Well, a lot of those have decided to roll back those waivers, and in doing so, they put those work requirements back into place. And with high unemployment, and a lot of states saying we don't even want to pay for job training programs, well, people who are even willing to work and do job training programs still get tossed off the rolls with no help available to them. It is pretty sad. For example, in Ohio, Governor John Kasich had actually began partially reinstating the work requirements, but here's a little twist in this one. The only counties exempted from these work requirements were mostly white Appalachian regions. According to a complaint filed by poverty advocates About 62.50 or 0.54% of Ohio's food stamps recipients in June 2014 were white. But in counties where Kasich waived work requirements, 94%, a full 94% of recipients were white. So, wait a minute. So you bring back, Governor John Kasich brings back some of these work requirements, but not for people in Appalachia and not for counties that are primarily white. What does that tell you? I think it tells me that there's a little bit of a racial element to this. There are some other stats here that I just want to put out there as well. A lot of people think the state governments pay for food stamps, and it makes it sound like the state governments do. They don't. The federal government pays for all states, for all food stamps during the states. They just leave it up to the states about how it's doled out. Now, they spend about $74 billion a year. Now, let's compare that to corporate welfare. Remember, food stamps is part of general welfare, right? And we spend $74 billion a year. Well, how much do we spend on corporations? We spend about $110 billion annually on giving corporations money. 8 of the largest corporations get about $36 billion in federal subsidies alone. Alone! These companies, some of these, Nike, Boeing, Intel, GM, Ford, Fiat, and Royal Dutch Shell, get all of this money. Some of those companies combined get $36 billion, about a third, a little more than a third, of food stamp spending. That's amazing. That's outrageous. And so here we are, complaining about food stamps, and you won't see these figures on Fox News because it doesn't fit their narrative. I doubt they'll even do a story on this. And if they do, they'll try and say, well, way too many people are still dependent on the government, and therefore we should continue to slash food stamps. It is really sad.